People often say to me, Richard, you seem so cheerful and optimistic in these dark days in which we know there are sort of malevolent forces at hand trying to lower our vibrations. What is it that you do? And I thought to myself, well, I'll come up with 10 ideas or 10 things that I find helpful, and you might find them helpful. The chances are you already know them anyway, but it gives you a second chance to sort of think about them and maybe introduce them in your lives if you find that they resonate. So these are 10 ideas that I've found useful in no particular order. They're just as I thought of them this morning as I got up, and I thought, oh, I know, yes, how about this and how about that? So the first thing that I find absolutely essential, and of course a lot of this I've learned over the last 16 months talking about these things that we've been talking about in recent times on the truth and sovereignty movement and the freedom movement. And the first one is, of course, most of us are dehydrated a lot of the time. We're drinking not necessarily the best things to keep our bodies in peak condition. And one of the best things, of course, that we can do is to have water. Now, probably not advisable to have the tap water because they're trying to fluoridate it and put in various other things, and we know that anybody who's tested the water, it does seem that as if it's rather nasty. However, we don't all have a natural stream nearby, and so the best thing is to somehow either filter it or reverse osmosisize it, if that's even a word, or the other one where you turn it into steam and you bring it back, distill it. And the other thing to add to that water, because once you've cleaned it up, you need to add the minerals that have disappeared. And Barbara O'Neill suggests that you put Celtic sea salt in it. I'm going to be interviewing Barbara O'Neill in September, going up to Scotland when she's over in this country. So that's very exciting. So yes, that would be ideal. Put a bit of Celtic sea salt in there and keep yourself hydrated. We don't drink enough water. When you have coffee and tea and various other things, it actually takes away the water. So although it's got water in it, it's doing the reverse effect. So keep you hydrated with water. That's the number one. It's so good for the skin. It's so good for the brain. It's so good for the organs. It's so good for the gut. It's so good for so many different things. And mostly we don't realise just how little water we're actually getting into the cells of our body. So that's a big one. The second one is another sort of similar thing, is to get out into the sunlight as much as we can. Now, I know that they're spraying the skies, they're dimming it down, but every time you see the sun come out, get out into it as much as you can. Don't put all that sunscreen on, because that is chemicals, which we never were designed to have over us. Obviously, don't necessarily go out into the hottest time of the day. Mad dogs and Englishmen go out into the midday sun. Clearly build up your resistance to the sun so you're not sunburning. Don't just strip down so you turn out to be a lobster. That's probably not a good idea. But the sun is very healthy, and it gives us that most important vitamin D, as well as lots of other things. So if you can, get out into the sun with a glass of water and you'll find yourself invigorated. And whilst we're talking about vitamin D, of course, number 3 on my list is we probably are not eating good enough food with enough vitamins and minerals in, so we need to add those to our diet, and we need to find a supplier of good vitamins and minerals. And so supplements are essential these days in order to get all those things that we would naturally have had when we were hunter-gatherers, when we were farming in the old-fashioned organic way. So things like magnesium is something we need, iodine and vitamin D, just to mention a few. And of course, there'll be plenty of people who can tell you more of the types of vitamins depending on specific needs. But trying to get those into the body is again another essential that we need. Number 4 on my list is we must remember, and this is again, it's so simple, we choose the thoughts that we think, or at least we do if we remember that we choose the thoughts and we don't let somebody else control our mind. And there's the old phrase, isn't it? If you don't control your mind, then somebody else will. And we've seen how that will come on later on in my list. But in the meantime, give yourself affirmations in the morning. We have this internal dialogue that we have with ourselves, do we not? And sometimes we say to ourselves, oh, it's all going wrong, or I can't do this, or that don't work, or I don't believe I'm good enough, and all of these. We need to get rid of that, because these thoughts create the reality, and we don't really want that. We can change our mood with our thoughts. We can go, oh God, I'm feeling really low. We are the ones that are in charge, and very often we forget that we're in charge of these thoughts, that we can create our own reality, even if that reality is simply, I'm happy, I'm excited, I'm full of laughter, I'm smiling. Do this enough, morning, noon and night. Continually remind yourself of who you want to be, what you want to be, and the mood you want to be happy and jolly, to be out there in the sun, hydrating yourself, and being a good, healthy, organic person, or man or woman, I suppose I ought to say, of course. And we choose our thoughts. So make sure we're guarded about what thoughts go into that, because that affects our health, our bodies, and makes us feel good, and I think makes us live longer. So particularly when you're in a busy environment, perhaps at work and what have you, and people are talking, and it's very easy to sort of downplay yourself. Now, I'm not saying that you big yourself up so that you become arrogant, but make yourself much more positive. Have that positive mental attitude. So we forget that we are in control of our thoughts, and that programs our subconscious mind. Bruce Lipton talks about this from a scientific point of view. Number 5 here is meet people in real life. Like-minded people. I've been so privileged actually running the YouTube channel that I have and been asked to talk to people. You start finding that in the truth and sovereignty movement, in the freedom movement, you start meeting people in which you can have ordinary everyday conversations, and nobody is there going to polarize what you say. People are on your side. Mostly, even if they disagree with you, they will not call you names and think you're stupid, or all those sort of things that you get with a lot of people if you just happen to have a different idea. In the past, I've found people would go, oh my goodness, you're mad for thinking that, and they would walk away. But being in the presence of people rather than online and talking to people on the phone or by messages on WhatsApp and Telegram and all of that, try and actually get together and be with people, sing and dance and laugh. You know, it's so good for one's health. It really is. And you can put the world to rights. You can have a drink in the pub or whatever, wherever that meeting place is. But try and meet people at least once a day. Somebody to talk to, somebody to have fun with, somebody to sing to or read to. Julia and I, we read to one another. And that will be coming up on my list. So number 6 is, obviously, this is almost the default position. Get rid of the television, get rid of mainstream media, stop watching things like Netflix and Amazon Prime. These programs, these entertainment things are full of programming, full of subliminal messages, full of vibrational taking you down type situations. They muck about with your brain and your perception of life. The advertising, for example, is telling you how to live. We've got this product, how to live. They're seducing you with, you must have this. You wouldn't be happy unless you have this. We've got to get rid of that. And of course, the news media and the storylines in the soap operas and things are just reinforcing the mainstream narrative. Get rid of it. Stop thinking about stuff that you have no control on, and stop worrying about the things that may or may not happen. We've seen that in the past with so many things that we were worried about, that people were telling us, oh yeah, nuclear explosion, where there's going to be bombs, there's a 4-minute warning, put a paper bag over your head, all this sort of nonsense. Never came to pass, did it? I mean, look at the recent time during the pandemic with all these so-called viruses flying around and variants and things. Seems much more suspicious that people, when they had that medical intervention, that's when people really started to get ill by some sort of poison that was placed into the body. So don't believe the mainstream narrative. Stop listening to their nonsense, the build-up of these wars. I don't give a monkeys about what's happening over somewhere else, because I'm thinking about what I'm doing myself and keeping myself healthy and hydrating and keeping my affirmations going. Don't let them bring your vibrations down. That's what they want. They want us low and they want us to be fearful. Well, we're not going to be fearful. Number 7, another way to help all those things create goodness in us is, of course, eat real food. Stop going to the supermarkets and buying these TV dinners or these food stuffs that have got all the chemicals in, which again bring us down, lower our vibration, shorten our lives, make us ill, and make us go off to the GP and the pharmacist. Now, that's not on my list, but going and taking all these pills and things that the doctors are offering you might not be a sensible thing. Food is your medicine. Real food, proper food. So support farmers who are growing real food, grass-fed or organic, healthy stuff, local ideally if you can get it, raw milk, proper veg, good veg box scheme, those sort of things. Gets you away from the big brands in the supermarkets and all their corporation stuff. And I try where possible to avoid giving my money to the big corporations, or indeed to the tax man as much as I can. But of course we have to buy fuel and that has tax in it, and sometimes we have to buy from a big, I suppose, online retailer because we can't find the things anywhere else or we need it in time. But the more we can support the local traders, the local people, the family-run businesses, the better. And that's where farm shops and farmers markets and local producers come in. So we should be supporting them, keep them going. And number 8, of course, use cash as much as you can. Now, I know that cash is fiat currency, it's promissory notes, and we're in that secondary system of money being backed by nothing. And it's all sort of, well, what happens if actually somebody says, I want you to pay up the money that you promised to pay the bearer the sum of, and all of that. But at least the cash that we're using as it's depreciating, and maybe one day we'll go to silver and gold and can have real assets in our pockets and buy stuff. But in the meantime, at least the cash is private. Nobody knows that transaction. And the more we can do that, it's telling the banks that we want this private transaction. I know they don't want it. They want to be able to control us with their CBDCs. The government wants to know and be able to program that money so that they can say, oh, you said something on social media you shouldn't have done. We will reduce your ability to buy fuel so that you can't get out of the place because we want you stuck in these 15-minute ghettos. But using cash means that our transactions, our businesses, as much as is possible, is private. It's between you and me, and nobody else need to know. Why should they know? And the more we can do that, the more that younger people can see the cash being utilised rather than paying by their phone or downloading these apps to pay so you can pay your parking and all of that. Perhaps the less people do that, the more chances that these businesses will keep the cash going on for the time being until we find a different type of monetary system, because fiat currency in and of itself is not the best. A debt-based society is not a great idea, but let's take the best of that and keep things private. And number 9 on my list is get out into the countryside, move about, go for walks, get onto your allotment if you've got one, help somebody else erect a shed or move some furniture or anything like that. But get out of the house, get out of those 4 walls, and even if it's just walking around the block or taking the dog for a stroll or getting into nature most specifically, take your shoes and socks off and ground yourself to the earth. The wonderful negative ions that come out of the earth that decharge the positive charges that's going around with the EMFs. Try and escape from this radioactivity that is all around the 5G, or at least the towers of them, and the 4G, the EMFs that all around, the electromagnetic field. Try and get out of that and build yourself up by walking and keeping the body moving and fluid. So essential. These are very simple things, all of them. They're very simple things to do, but they help get yourself feeling that sense of freedom and being in control, and they raise your vibrations. And the final one on my list is one that's pertaining to me. You say, well, what are you going to do then when you're not watching the mainstream media and you want to relax? For me, I do old-fashioned things. I read books. I love to read books. I like candles in the house so the lighting is not the modern LED lighting. And I smoke my pipe and I sit in front of my wood-burning stove. Try and find something wholesome and primitive, if you like, to do. Reading old books, not necessarily, I mean, there's nothing wrong with reading modern books. I got loads of them, people send them to me. But some of the old books shows you the old way of life, reminds you to slow down, to calm down, to take things easy. People were a lot more expressive in the old texts. They could spend a bit of time. They slowed their vibrations down. They enjoyed their lives. They had fun. They took time out with their families. They ate meals around the table. They had old-fashioned ideas, which we are fast losing thanks to the mainstream media and even the super media of the alternative media, the YouTubes and the social media and all of this. You find something from the old ways that you think actually still speaks to you. Get a hobby, whatever it is, you know, whatever that is, to do something with your hands, be creative. Julia and I read to each other these old books of an evening, sitting there by candlelight, smoking our pipes and looking into the fires. It's escaping that system, the new system, the modern system, and thinking the way the government would like you to think, I think is so essential. So there's my 10 top tips of trying to keep yourself above and beyond the nonsense that's pushed down on you. I'm sure that you have plenty of ideas that you'd put in the comments, and I can read those and see what you think should be added to that list. In the meantime, I'm going to hydrate myself with some Celtic sea salt in some good filtered water. Till next time, thanks for watching. Goodbye.